Good morning, everyone. So this is our last session of this module, which is understanding learning. And in this module, we are trying to understand what learning is, that is how it is defined by different people. We looked at its definitions. We are also trying to understand the nature and characteristics of learning. And we looked at many of those characteristics. And then types of learning. We looked at that also, domains of learning. This is what we are going to focus in today's session, a brief of all those three domains. And then factors influencing learning. We looked at it in a Wednesday's class, and theories of learning. So in today's session, we are going to focus on domains of learning and theories of learning. So most of the focus will be on theories of learning, a brief introduction of each, and domains of learning. So let me go to that slide. So domains of learning, as I explained to you the other day, there are three domains of learning: cognitive, affective, and cognitive domain of learning. I'm sure you must have found a little bit about all of those things. So cognitive deals with what we call our ability to think, to reflect, and to make choices, while affective looks at your inner self, which is your feelings, emotions. In cognitive domain, the focus is on, actually most of the focus in learning remains on cognitive domain, and affective domain cognitive domain, if you remember education psychology course, because that is a prereq for this one, for learning theories. So you must have looked at the theories of what we call cognitive development, and how textbooks are organized when they look at cognitive development, and how this idea of different stages of cognitive development, such as sensory motor stage of conceiving information, then stage of looking at information from environment around us, pre-operational stage, concrete operational stage, formal operational stage, that is there. So most of the learning actually is focused around, if we study learning, we stay focused on cognitive domain. Some of it is also touches the affective domain, where we are looking at how it emotionally affects us, right? Such as how we behave with others, how we live our lives, what choices we make, what kind of clothes. So affective, emotional, and spiritual part of development. Now, cognitive domain of learning, as I couldn't explain to you the other day. So it refers to the connection that we have made between the knowledge that is processed in cognition, and how it affects our behavior. And why is it that some of the knowledge that we have processed, it affects us more than some of the knowledge, right? For example, the knowledge that we get from humanities and social sciences, it affects us more than the knowledge we get from sciences, right? So why is it? And why is it that some of the people, for example, look at corona pandemic, some of the people still are unwilling to believe that we have this pandemic among us, and they simply living saying that it will go away, nothing is going to happen. Look at what is happening around. Nothing has happened. No one in my family has died, or in my neighborhood has died. We do not know. So, but there are people who believe that this is is still within in this world, and we need to take necessary precautions and measures. And it is affecting the choices that they are making, their personal choices, and some of the choices are what should we say? For example, pleasant. Some of them are unpleasant. For example, the personal choice of getting married these days. If you look at the expenses, of course, it is less expensive as compared to organizing a marriage in a normal setting, because you can invite more people, you can have 3-4 days function. But in these days, the government is not allowing longer functions. You have to manage within a certain number of people according to the space which you have booked for the plan or for the event. So so it affects us in many ways. Some of them is pleasant, some of them is unpleasant. So when we are thinking about what we are doing, and we are connecting it with the knowledge that we have in our cognition, and we are connecting all the learning from this to, so we are connecting this with us as well. So that is what we call connection or connections, if you want to call it. Now, there are many people who looked at this. We have heard a lot about cognitive domain and affective domain. So cognitive domain, for example, when we look at what we call cognitive domain, we have different theories around it. And when we looked at affective domain, there are different theories around that also. But when we look at, this is the latest idea, cognitive domain. And though they are saying that that the people who promoted this idea, they said that the human mind has 3 faculties: cognition, knowing, and affection. So cognition is knowing, affection is valuing, and cognition is striving, right? So that is a very what we call abstract idea. Cognition is striving. So most of the time, the cognition domain, we look at, and this is the very prominent thinking in amongst psychologists, teachers, educational psychologists, and there are plenty of ideas around cognitive development, such as taxonomy of educational objectives, and then we have taxonomy of educational objectives that affect related to affective domain, a taxonomy of learning, teaching, and assessing. And there are other ideas which are related to this, but there is very little information about cognition. They are saying that this is a domain of behaviors or mental processes which are associated with goal-oriented action. So we might say that cognition is vectored energy, as Atman called it. It's a personal energy that has direction and magnitude. So as you can see, the word direction, magnitude, energy, these are all abstract words. How much energy do we have? Can we measure it? How much are we directed to our goal? Can we measure it? So these are some of the things that remain abstract. So that's why cognition part of learning is a little abstract concept of idea, because when we are trying to do something, so mostly we engaged in intentionally. So when we intentionally do something, we invest energy in the process of doing that. So in this manner, our commitment to invest our energy in the work needed to reach the goal that we have, that we value, that we have set for ourselves. So So which is linked to knowledge or skill focus, and the content found in the cognitive domain. So our goal, that what we want to achieve, is connected with our cognition, because the goal that we have set is actually based on the information that we processed, and that information has helped us. That's it. When we come back to understanding different domains, then we will look at it at that stage. Factors influencing learning, we looked at also. So the next that I said that I will look into is theories of learning. I'm sure you must have heard the word theories of learning. It's not something what we call old, and it is not something which is new as well. So when we say theories of learning, we are looking at three different ideas of learning. One of them is what we call behaviorist approach to learning. So one of them, behaviorist approach of learning, that whatever we learn, it is actually reflected in our behavior. So we demonstrate it, we show it through our behavior. So that is behaviorist perspective of learning. Cognitive perspective of learning says that learning actually takes place in the process that happens in our brain, so which is unseen. So we have learned a lot of things, and most of the things remain invisible to us and to other people, right? The process that happens when we decide something, for example, you are adding 2 plus 2, so the process that has gone to get to the answer 4, that is learning for them. 4, which is the product, is not the learning, that is just evidence that you can do, but the process that you have used to reach to that answer is actually learning. So that is what they call cognition, what goes in as you are trying to find an answer of a certain question, try to resolve a situation, whether math or physics or real life situation. And the third one is what we call social constructivism or constructivism. And this is what they say, that we learned a lot of knowledge. Okay, so we are using cognition, a lot of processes, but how do we connect that with the real life, with the real world? So if we are able to connect that, if we are able to construct knowledge that is helpful to us, that is helpful to community, society, to me personally, then that is what they call, we have successfully constructed knowledge for ourselves. So that is what they call constructivism or social constructivism. The other learning theory that is also looked at is trial and error method of learning. Now, according to this idea, we learn by doing things over and over again. So you might be trying to draw something, you might be learning to draw, let's say, a bottle. So you can only learn to draw it if you draw it over and over, right? So there is what they call, there has to be, so you wanted to learn to draw a bottle because there is a certain stimulus around you. So you have a certain stimulus, something is outside around you, and that has invoked or provoked you to learn, that has made you to take this or move into or set out on this learning adventure of learning how to draw a bottle. And then the response is to maybe watch a YouTube video, or to maybe contact someone, someone you know, maybe drawing person, drawing teacher in school, and then you learn to draw, then you practice. So the first is trial, and there might be some error, and then you redo it, and then you redo it, and then you redo it, unless and until you are able to draw a perfect bottle or anything. If you understand, you can make anything. For example, if you're learning to tie, to wear a tie, then of course you might be watching YouTube videos, but you keep watching and practicing unless and until you have mastered that skill, right? So that is trial and error. So there is stimulus, something that, because you need to attend a wedding, so that is a stimulus. The response is that I must watch a video to learn, right? So, and then this stimulus response learning will occur in what we call, and there is reward at the end, that you will be wearing a tie and people will be appreciating what you are wearing and how you look while you attend that event. So there is stimulus, what we call trial and error learning theory. So we learn because by practicing over and over again, and we keep practicing and trying to master a certain skill, unless because there is what we call reward at the end of it, right? And there are a lot of ideas within it. And in this case, there are a few experiments. We will look at those experiments in detail when we will be looking at this theory in great detail. The next theory that we'll be looking at is classical conditioning. It's Pavlov's idea of classical conditioning. You must be familiar with this experiment of dog and saliva. You must have read those, heard somewhere. And Pavlov won the Nobel Prize in Psychology in 1904, long time ago, more than 100 years ago. And his idea of that is classical conditioning, that we can condition some of our behaviors. We can condition people, we can train people to behave in a certain way, right? And that we have what they call, there are a lot of things that we need to do. And he performed an experiment and he said that we need to make sure that people are provided with the right reward as they engage into something. There is a reward so that you can, because if they keep receiving that reward, they will keep behaving. For example, if you were in school, you remember your school days, and if you were awarded a certificate for full attendance and you wanted to have that certificate again next year, then of course through that year you have to make sure that you attend your classes so that your attendance is 100% in school or college. Or if you were awarded and you felt that a lot of people were attracted to you because you were good in something, so next year again you will be trying to be good in something so that people are attracted to you. So the teacher are appraising you. The principal come and say that he or she is a very good student, contributing a lot in school life or college life. So there is a reward at the end. So we learn because we expect to receive a reward, right? And that reward is actually what we call pleasant. And also this idea also says that if we want to minimize certain behavior, unwanted behavior, then we have to use what they call punishment. So if we need to either promote a certain behavior, we need to reward individuals, students who show this particular behavior that we wanted to promote. And if we want to discourage a certain behavior, we need to punish those students who might be showing this behavior, because this punishment will discourage the reoccurrence of this behavior. So that is what we call classical conditioning. So a behavior can be conditioned through different things which we can do, rewards or punishment, right? The other idea in learning is operant conditioning. This is Skinner's idea, and Skinner's belief that so Skinner's idea was an improvement to classical conditioning, and he said that that's true that there are certain behaviors which are natural to us, right? For example, if you close your eyes and you open your eyes suddenly after some time, so you will blink your eyes a couple of times, because your eyes cannot bear the light that is going to come to your eyes. So your eyes need a couple of seconds to adjust to that light, so you will be blinking your eyes. So that is what they call operant conditioning, that we think what is happening, and the decisions, the choices that we make is actually a process of carefully thought out process. So we set into a carefully thought out thinking process, and at the end of it we decide to do something, right? So of course, rewards and punishment does help here, but mere reward is not going to ensure continuity of that behavior. So if we want to make a certain behavior a permanent part of our personality or of our life, then it has to be more than the reward, right? Which is something within a person is it should be there within a person, and this idea of reinforcement is there, which is connecting with a certain behavior with a life. So they are saying, okay, so idea of classical and conditioning, yes, we can condition few behaviors through rewards and punishment, but they are saying that this is not enough. That is not the end of. We need to make those behaviors permanent part of our life also. So they are saying that we have to use a lot of reinforcers to improve, to encourage and discourage some of those behaviors. And there are related ideas to this, and we will look at as well. Then cognitivist theory of learning, as I explained to you a while ago, this looks at what we call our ability to process information, to store information in relevant spaces in our mind so that we can find out, quickly retrieve that information. So there is, so we look at in detail, and I think you must have learned about a lot in a foundational video also. I explained to you the cognitive developments. By looking at it, you can understand a bit of it, right? And then we have another learning theory is a meaningful verbal learning theory. Now it says that it takes place when an idea that we want to learn is related in some sensible, practical way to ideas that the learner or the students already possess. So they are saying that if we want to make a learning meaningful, we need to connect this new learning to the old learning. So if we know something in the past, we have studied in class 3. So we can only present or build new knowledge on that knowledge. So what they are saying that we need to have pre-existing cognitive structures in our brain so that the new information when comes in, it can be placed on top of that, it can connect to that. So that is meaningful verbal learning, right? So they believe the person who suggested this idea, he is also Bell, he believed that before new materials can be presented effectively, for example, you are going to learn some new, every day there is a new content. But if you look at the beginning of the class, teacher begins with recalling what you have learned. And then as teacher is teaching, teacher is also connecting what he or she is teaching with the old content. So it's not that, so he or she is making connection with the previous content. So that is what we call meaningful learning. So by connecting the new content with the old, so that the learners, they can make sense of the new, what we call new content. Then the other one is constructivist theory. As I just said a while ago, it looks at that knowing it's not important that we know, but what is important that how we know it, that how we can, the process. So constructivism is more focused on process. So if we are able to understand how I constructed a certain kind of knowledge, I am capable of constructing all kinds of knowledge, right? So that is becoming aware of how I learn. So that is what they call constructivism, right? So yeah, so in this case, learning is an active process in which learners, they construct new ideas or concepts which are based upon their current knowledge or past knowledge, right? So there are a lot of related ideas. So we look at it when we come on to the detailed theory. The next learning theory is social learning theory. This was presented by Albert Bandura. Now that's very famous also because it is related to our social environment. Because they say that when we look at learning, so we are not looking at uh, only what is going on in our brain or what is going on, how we behave, but it is also based on our behaviors, which have taken shape because of our observation of our society or of our community. So learning, which is social learning, is actually taking place or shaping by or through observation. Very quick example, it's not, you must have seen in your school years as well, that if a teacher wants to communicate a certain message, for example, teacher wants to communicate that he or she doesn't like a certain behavior, and teachers, sometimes teachers do not punish someone who might be showing this behavior at the first place, but teacher might end up punishing someone who may have shown that behavior later, to give an idea, I do not like this behavior. So by punishing or by um, um, maybe showing something, rewarding some student or punishing some student or one student, this idea that I do not like this behavior, the school administration, the college administration, the university administration doesn't like this behavior, and this is why it is punished, right? So there are what we call social learning theory, that we learn. Most of our social behaviors are actually learned through observation, how we interact with other people, and what is acceptable way of interacting with others. For example, very um, common, we call in our context teachers sir or ma'am or madam. But if someone from the Western context is going to come to Pakistan, the person is going to feel odd because he or she has to call teachers as sir or madam, because in that context they don't call teachers sir or ma'am or madam, but they usually call them by their first name, Mr. or Miss, or whatever the name is. So that is what they call social learning. So that is, so of course the student is going to learn to say all that, but learn to behave, and that it also tells us that we continue to learn new things, new social behaviors. And that's when we go, for example, when I went abroad to study, I used to call my professors with their first names because that's what they would like to be called. But in our context, many of our teachers, they don't like to be called by the name, they would like to be called by a title. For example, here in our context, if you have a PhD degree, you would like to be called Dr. Sahab, Dr. Sahab. But in the Western context, they just want to be called by the name because that's just one degree. They don't want to associate themselves with a certain degree. They want to associate themselves with what they are, which is their name. So that is social learning. And we keep learning this, right? So that is what they call the theory, the idea of social learning theory. And most of our behavior, social behaviors, actually, they are learned through observation, right? And most of our behaviors, sometimes there is some intrinsic motivation, intrinsic inner reinforcement as well. Though some of them might be affected by external environment, external rewards, when you behave in a certain way, which is liked by your family, your siblings, your parents, your uncle and aunts, you would like to repeat those behaviors. But there might be behaviors which are not liked by those people, so you may not repeat those behaviors. So that is important that we look at that as well. So that is social learning theory. So in that, there are a lot of ideas: retention, retain, reproduction, motivation, all that. Then the next theory is Kohler's insight learning. As you are familiar with the word insight, I have an insight, which is it is the abrupt realization of a problem's in solution. So insight is getting intuition, something strictly suddenly comes to your mind and you no, okay, that's why this is happening, that's why that's happening. This is the solution. I can solve this problem using this formula, right? So that is what they call insight learning. So it's not a result of trial and error or responding to an environmental stimulus or a result of observing someone trying to solve the same problem. So it is not a, it is completely cognitive experience of an individual that requires the ability to visualize the problem. So as we are visualizing a problem and we are trying to find the solution internally. So, so before initiating a behavioral response, so before we take an action, we think about it, and as we're thinking about it, we get an insight, we get an idea. You must have seen the images where they've shown bulb over there, and the bulb is near the head, and that means an idea has come to me how I can solve this problem, or how I should behave here, how I should behave. So they have, they must have observed a lot of animals such as monkeys and chimpanzees, and they have seen how they were behaving, and they try to solve, apply it on humans as well. And we can see it with very young children, even with you also. We provide you certain things in the classroom, and we ask you to make use of those things. So we could learn, okay, let's see what insight can we get with about those things which are given to work with, right? So that is what we call insight learning. So that was the last learning theory. So we will look at, from Monday, on Monday's class, we will begin with behaviorist perspective of learning. And as we learn about that, we will be also trying to see some of the other associated ideas with that. And next week, by end of next week, we should have completed this behaviorist perspective of learning. And and by and hopefully there will be the first practical task will be given to you by Friday next week, and you will be working on that in the next week or so. So I'm just going to end this session. Shamurad, if you can write your ID number here in the chat so that I can mark you present here.